Welcome to the Explainer. I want you to picture a land where, for literally thousands of years, massive empires have violently risen and fallen, but somehow its core identity just wasn't erased. Today, we're exploring the story of Iran and tackling this fascinating mystery of how a civilization survives millennia of conquest. And here's the spoiler, it wasn't through sheer military force, but through this incredible, almost mind-bending power of cultural adaptation. So, how does a civilization survive its own destruction? Man, it's a heavy thought, right? Think about it. When conquerors come in, burn your cities to the ground, and completely rewrite your laws, how do you stop your culture from just disappearing forever into the history books? Well, the answer to that question is really the beating heart of our whole journey today. Section 1. The Foundation of Identity. Now, long before modern nations were even a thing, ancient wanderers settled the absolutely rugged, extreme terrain of the Iranian Plateau. And out of this tough foundation, a real visionary named Cyrus the Great emerged right around 550 BC. He managed to unite the early tribes, but what's really interesting about this is he didn't just build the massive Achaemenid Empire, he built an absolute masterclass in coexistence. He did something super rare for the time. He actually allowed conquered peoples to keep their own traditions and religions. He famously championed early human rights concepts. You might have heard of the Cyrus cylinder. By connecting these incredibly distant lands with vast road networks, he enabled the free movement of art, culture, and knowledge. Cyrus essentially created the baseline for adaptation, proving that, integration is actually often way stronger than shared domination. Section 2. Ashes of the First Empire. But as we know, no empire escapes time. In 330 BC, a relentless Alexander the Great marched into Persia, bringing a storm that resulted in the catastrophic burning of Persepolis, literally the beating heart of the empire. But here's where that whole Persian bend, don't break motif truly shines. Following that massive trauma, the empire fractured under Greek Seleucid control. But Persian culture? It didn't just vanish. It fused. Cities actually started blending Greek architecture right alongside Persian traditions. And bubbling just beneath the surface, that Persian spirit was patiently waiting. It eventually revived under the Parthians and then fully restored Iran as a dominant world force in 224 AD with the Sassanid Empire. Now, right at the center of this incredible Sassanid restoration was a powerful unifying force, Zoroastrianism. And we have to understand, this wasn't just a religion for them. It was the very soul of the empire. It was all built on this eternal struggle between light and darkness, and the everyday pursuit of good thoughts, good words, good deeds. For the Sassanids, who, by the way, were locked in these absolutely exhausting, centuries-long wars with the Roman Empire, these burning fire temples were the crucial glue that kept their entire civilization together. Section 3. Transformation under Islamic rule. For a lot of civilizations out there, a total military defeat just means straight-up extinction. But in the 7th century, when the Arab Islamic armies arrived and defeated an already exhausted Sassanid Empire, Iran shows transformation. And this brilliantly illustrates our main point. They integrated into the broader Islamic world, but instead of just disappearing into it, Persian culture adopted in a really remarkable way. The Persian language absorbed all these new Arabic administrative influences, but completely retained its core. And a huge part of that is thanks to epic poets like Ferdowsi. He essentially saved the language by preserving ancient Persian history in his massive, monumental work, the Shahnameh. So Iran essentially became this amazing bridge between worlds, brilliantly blending its ancient heritage with new Islamic thought. Section 4. Surviving the Mongol Storm. Fast forward a few centuries, and honestly, nothing could have prepared the region for the Mongols. Their arrival wasn't just a defeat. It was a devastating storm that absolutely decimated populations and left these incredibly deep, traumatic scars across the whole civilization. And then, just as they even began to recover, the Timurids arrived with yet another brutal wave of conquest. The trauma was absolute, and each time Iran broke. And each time, it rose again. Even after the sheer, absolute devastation of the Mongols, the core identity endured. And there's this incredible twist of history here. The Mongol conquerors, they eventually converted to Islam and actually became massive patrons of Persian art, architecture, and administrative systems. It's wild. From the absolute ashes, scattered knowledge was painstakingly preserved, and the culture miraculously absorbed its conquerors once again. Section 5. Redefining a modern nation. Let's move to the 16th century and see how this builds, because the Safavid Empire completely redefined the nation here. They adopted Shia Islam as their official identity, which was an absolutely crucial decision. Why? Because it created a clear, solid political and religious boundary that separated Iran from its powerful neighboring empires. And this sparked a massive cultural rebirth. Cities like Isfahan completely transformed into these global centers of breathtaking beauty. We're talking stunning blue-tiled mosques and incredibly intricate calligraphy that basically unified Iran with a very distinct modern identity. But of course, history never stands still. Following the decline of the Safavids, the Qajar dynasty in the 18th century brought this tough period of internal weakness and pretty heavy foreign influence. Then, the 20th century Pahlavi era tried to counter all of that with really rapid modernization. But beneath all the shiny new infrastructure, these intense tensions were growing between deep-rooted tradition and modern authority. And as you might know, this all culminated in the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The monarchy ended, and an Islamic republic rose in its place, a totally new political system rooted in religion, but now forced to navigate all the complexities of our modern global realities. So what's the actual result of thousands of years of this extreme resilience? Well, today's Iran is a land of absolutely fascinating contrasts. On one hand, you have ancient ruins whispering the stories of forgotten kings and fallen empires. And right alongside them, you have bustling modern cities where deep, ancient tradition meets today's technology. It really is a nation entirely shaped by being conquered, divided, transformed, and reborn over and over again. The history literally echoes through every single modern street. Ultimately, this is not just a story of empires rising and falling. It's a story of an identity that bends but never breaks. It adapts, but it never disappears. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question. If an identity can absorb the ashes of its conquerors for millennia, what in the world will it transform into next? It's a fascinating thought to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.